Okay, ladies, so today's lesson is going to be over molecular evolution, and this stuff is a little bit higher order, I could guess you could say. Definitely a little bit of abstract thinking here because this isn't a change that we can physically see, but rather one we can observe through the DNA. So it might be something you have to think a little bit harder about. And I'll tell you right now, there's not too much information over this section on the test. It's mostly going to focus on 1, 2, and 3, but there will be some areas of this section on the test. So your objectives today, you're going to analyze the molecular clocks and what they are, and you're going to also explore where new genes can come from. Okay, so the molecular clock, essentially what this is it measures the rate of time it takes for mutations to occur, and this is going to give a time frame of how long two species have been evolving independent from one another. So think of a literal clock, okay? All of our clocks at one point started out at 12 o'clock, okay? And different mutations caused all of our clocks to tick differently. So neutral mutations are what make species more different from one another. And those are the what we call the ticks on the molecular clock. If you don't know what a tick is, look at an old-fashioned clock. Every time the little second hand moves, that's considered a tick. Okay? They call it a tick because usually the second hand is not on some clocks, and if you look at the minute hand, it almost looks to rock back and forth like a little tick. Okay, so the more differences in the mutation that there is in the DNA, the more time has passed since there has been a common ancestor. So if you look at, let's say, humans and a chimpanzee, there's going to be less ticks separating us than if you were to compare us to, let's say, a tree. So this is an example of how the molecular clock works. So you see there we have a section of the DNA from a common ancestor at the far left, and then a mutation occurs at random. And you can see in this strand that it causes two, we'll call different species, okay? You can see on the top one that there was a T, and now it was substituted for an A. And then on the bottom strand, there was a C, and it got substituted for a T. Then on the top strand, you see two other mutations happen. In the bottom strand, one more mutation happens. And what that causes is three new species to be made. And if you look at each of the DNA strands, they are each unique from each other. C and B are very closely related, and C and B are a little bit more distantly related to A, but they're still related. So you can see how all the variety on Earth has come from small mutations like this. So there are a lot of clocks in one genome, and some are going to be ticking faster than others, which means some are going to be mutating, evolving more than others. And scientists use different formulas to determine how fast these ticks are exactly going. So kind of like how we can use second hand, minute hand, or hours to time things. Well, they don't just do seconds, minutes, hours. They do days, weeks, years. This helps them distinguish the time between, like I said, apes and humans, fish and mammals, and just trying to figure out how far away we are from common ancestors from everything on Earth. So the big question is, where did all of our genes in our human genome come from if we're all related? And this is going to be through gene duplication and modification of existing genes. So mutations, editing, that kind of thing, that's what causes it. So we know during meiosis, all of our genes are copied and reproduced. We know what crossing over is by now. We have swapping of genes that can occur, and there might actually be unequal share of genes where we may see one chromosome becoming longer. And this is going to create new chromosomes with genes that can be duplicated and create more diversity. So as a result, over millions of years, you get new species and a lot of different genes and traits, and that's why we have all the traits we do as humans. That's why other animals have many distinguishing traits as well. And then a good way to kind of think of how duplicate genes can evolve is, let's say I ask you to write a paper. So you email me your paper, I look over it, and I say, you know, this is pretty good, but I want you to go through, I want you to change some things. I want you to add some things. I want you to go back and use spell check, use better grammar, whatever it may be. I ask you to edit your paper. So you edit it and you send it back to me, and you have two different versions of the same paper. The general information is still going to be the same, but you have slightly changed it. So this is the same thing that happens with duplicate genes. So as one set of the genes evolve, the others may stay the same, which is where we can get separation. So if you see here, we have the original gene, we have a duplication somewhere in a common ancestor, and we have a mutation in one copy, and that gene evolves some new function, and then the original stays the same. So this created a brand new gene in a gene pool, wherever it might be. That gene might lead to an eventual evolution of a new species, or it just might be a new gene, a new trait, something that the organism may need to survive. So then we also have gene families. We've talked about this before, but this is essentially multiple copies of these duplicated genes can turn into a group of related genes. So this is going to think back to the Hox genes where we talked about, because it was a huge gene family that can control that development. And the gene families are going to have genes that all produce similar yet different proteins. So to focus on those Hox genes, that's what we're going to look at. And Hox genes determine body part development in life. So when we have small changes in the Hox genes during embryological development, we're going to actually see large, huge changes in the adult animals. So just a small little change can have huge effects on the adult body. So an example of this is one of the genes in the family, UBX, controls leg growth in flies. If it's turned off or damaged, the flies born will not have any legs. So we see a small change in a Hox gene can cause major evolutionary events. Now in this situation, that fly is not going to survive, it's not going to reproduce. So is it going to affect evolution? Probably not. But we can see how a small change like that, one little gene, can cause significant effects later on down the line. And then the last thing we're going to talk about is timing. And during development, you develop your body parts at specific times. During fertilization, you don't just magically become a giant human, but rather things are taken in small steps. You start to develop more. You eventually develop a heart, your fingernails, your brain, your lungs, your body, all that stuff. All that slowly develops over time. And everything is timed by our DNA. And if these timings are slower or faster than normal, we can actually see adverse side effects in the adult body. So look at your fingers. Do you have long, slender fingers or short and stubby fingers? Or do you think they're pretty proportional? If you have long, slender fingers, chances are you had a little bit longer to develop. Your timing was a little bit slower. If it was fast, you're going to have short, stubby fingers because your fingers developed more quickly. They didn't develop all the way out. If you have normal, medium-sized fingers, or I guess proportional fingers to your body, then everything developed on time, so to speak. But that goes for your entire body too. So make sure, if you all have any questions, write them down. I wanted to keep it right around 10 minutes. I know I kind of probably went sort of fast. But really, like I said, we're not going to be testing too much over any of this. We will go into more specifics in class, what will be expected. Look at your study guide. Make sure you're studying. And the secret word is going to be minion. The secret word is minion. So make sure you do the video quiz now, get that done, out of the way, and I will see you in class. Have a great day.